Welcome, everybody. Bob Umar here with Chris Edmonds, and I'm excited to join you today for another Powerful Connection broadcast. Say hello, Chris, again.
Bobby and friends, good morning from beautiful Conifer, Colorado.
Conifer, Colorado. Awesome. Well, today, again, we're bringing Chris back because the last time we did this, we got cut off. And so now we are live to share with you about driving results through culture, which is a really great topic, and he's written a book on it. And and if you have lots of questions around culture, around driving results, creating more productivity, and employees creating more purpose around them, which is something that I love too. By all means, please join the conversation. In the meantime, a few logistic things. One is normally I'm here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8:45 a.m. But because Chris on the West Coast, I've decided to put him on 8:45 a.m. and we're at 11:45 a.m. So just a little bit of a shift there for our West Coast friends who we love, and also I feel bad because when I do the normal broadcast, they get left out, and so I feel bad. I feel bad for them. Now, who's getting left out? It's my Australian friends because I think they're asleep. So
we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah, this might be some late bloomers, like some early risers on the West Coast. You never know, right? If you are joining it again, we want you to engage, right? So comment below. Let us know where you're from. Are you from Africa, North America, Europe, South America, Asia, Australia? Let us know. Ask questions, ask questions of Chris around what we're talking about. And then number 3, just engage people that are there. If you like what you're hearing, you can like, love, heart, tap, a light bulb, and smiley face. You can actually share comments. You can engage the people that are on there. You can tag people to join the conversation. If you really like this broadcast, you can share it on your own pages to provide value for your own audiences. And definitely feel free to tag us. We would love to hear from you. All right, so that's kind of how we're going to go with that. In the meantime, I will let Chris get started. Let's start before we dive into the topic. I want to tell a bit about kind of you and your story, who you are and where you've been.
Well, boy, I am a West Coaster. I was born in LA, and in the 50s, in the early 50s, so I'm old. But what is fascinating is to me is that I was kind of an observer of the human condition, even back then in elementary school, middle school, watching my friends, how they interact with their parents, me trying to figure out how to act with my parents and an older brother, right? So grew up, I surfed my way through my senior year in high school because, of course, right, I was in Long Beach, California at that stage. Went to Whittier College, which is Southern California school, and graduated in 1974. So made some great friends there, and pretty much I had grown up with my dad and mom supporting the YMCA. So I actually went into YMCA work. So I was a YMCA executive for 15 years and learned a great deal from some wonderfully unique, different, in some cases, the YMCAs I was at were huge adult fitness and huge programs and big facilities. And in other cases, we had a borrowed room, right? And we were running programs out in the community. So I learned how to do a whole bunch with very little, but again, also learned how to manage and train and develop senior leaders in the community who I would grab as board members. So I really got very, very wonderful, rich training about how do I help people look at how they can give and how they can serve their communities. So from there, I went to Urination Central Bank. I had an opportunity to start to work for the Federal Reserve. That was the early 90s, and got a corporate experience as a facilitator, trainer, consultant, which was widely different, as you can guess, from the YMCA nonprofit executive work. And early on in that tenure, we brought in Ken Blanchard, who's a wonderful soul, a wonderful thinker, a wonderful speaker, wonderful writer. And at dinner that night, he said, "You should come work for me." So I did. So I spent almost 25 years working with Blanchard while still maintaining this small consulting firm that I started back in 1990. So since with my support and all the learnings I got from the Blanchard organization and Ken and his colleagues, I really began to get my feet under me with not just looking at how do we help build skills through training, but how do we make sure a culture supports the skills you're trying to get people to model, right? So it became culture leadership. And I started doing that in 1990, got away from it, and boy, back in 2010, really dove into it. So I've written some cute little soft cover books around great leadership and positive workplaces and corporate culture. And the big book, the actual hardcover book, came out in 2014. That's called The Culture Engine. And literally from 2012 on, I've been doing much of my work here helping organizations, mostly helping senior leaders, get clear that they are in charge of culture. And if it's not good, they can't blame anybody else. And most leaders pay very little attention to the quality of culture, and they assume that it's an HR thing or an OD thing. So I enjoy working with leaders, usually for a pretty long time, 12 to 18 months. You're not going to get rid of me, right? Because it's the issue of not just setting a different foundation, but behaving differently.
And culture change takes a while too, right?
Absolutely.
Culture change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm careful. It's interesting because change management is a skill set that all senior leaders need, and they rarely get a chance to learn how to do it well. So I literally see my role as educating senior leaders on this is how you make change happen, and this is how you make change stick, and it works.
Right. Nice. And why don't you tell? And again, if people are joining us, comment below. Let us know where you're from, where you're watching, and also ask questions about our own culture change and creating purposeful employees. That's something we'd love to hear from you. Tell everybody how we met. How we met each other.
Boy, I think we've been hanging on as social media friends. And I think it was Lolly Daskall's Lead From Within that is kind of the chat. I had no idea what Twitter was back in 2009, but I think you and I connected that far back, and it was Lolly's Lead From Within that I think caused us to come together. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's about right. The year's off because I actually joined Twitter in 2010.
Gotcha.
But yes, I found this tweet chat. I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And what I found in the tweet chats, because Twitter was something new to me. I tried it for a little bit because someone told me, Bobby, if you have a voice or a message, you should be on there. I go, okay, fine. I thought it was just for celebrities and sports figures and whatever.
Yeah.
At the time. So then I got on there and I started sharing stuff, and no one was paying attention to me. but I, the only way I did it, I started with this. I just called it the Power Connection tip. Number 1, and I just said smile, and then I did one tweet per day and a tip, and by around 12, people started replying back. Oh, that's interesting. What are you doing? Oh, okay. And the next thing you know, and then by about February of 2010, I was like, you know what, this is going really well. I have 200 followers. Wow.
Yeah.
They actually follow me. I should really invest in Twitter, and so I did. And then I found Lolly Daskall's Lead From Within. One of the things I found out was that basically the way it was set up is 1 hour. They asked like 8 to 10 questions, and you basically answer whatever you can. And what I found was I was pretty good and pretty fast with the quick nugget. Blah, boom, blah, boom, blah, boom. And I was like, wow, I was just churning it out. And it actually got me a heck of a lot of followers.
Yeah.
And then that's when I decided to start my own tweet chat called the POC Chat, Power Connection Chat. Which I ran for about 7-8 years. It's now we retired it actually last year. So
that's pretty awesome though to stay with it and to have an audience.
Yeah, but I remember people like you were just great content, great insights. There was Al Abshar. There was some really Lolly, of course, like just really amazing people I met there that had great insights. And so I'm glad you're able to be here with us. So. Christiana says hello from Charleston, and Arul says hello as well. We're looking for more people to say hello and engage and ask questions. But Chris, why don't you tell us a bit more about? Let's start with the challenges that companies are having when it comes to culture.
It's interesting because again, there's it's a Western focus. It's an industrial age focus. It's a focus upon getting crap done, right? And it's performance, it's results, it's profits. As a nonprofit exec, make no mistake, we had to generate profits, right? They went back into the organization, but if you're not generating profits in a nonprofit, you cannot keep people on. You cannot continue to run programs. So if you want to look at it as a results focus, as a profit focus, the problem is that frontline employees, mid-level leaders, huge organizations around the globe, you can have entire plants or distribution centers or creative offices feel disconnected because they can feel that the focus is entirely on money, right? It's on the results. Was thinking about this the other day. I had a client back in 2001 who way back then, we didn't have high quality, high def cameras, video cameras, and so simply and so light and so easy. So they had this big, huge camera, right, that they got that was actually running tape. But they went through and they interviewed. They had 600 employees at the time. They were a catalog print shop, so pretty blue collar, right? Pretty big warehouse, noisy. So they had this big, huge camera, right, that they got that was actually running tape. They went through and they interviewed that 600 employees at the time. They were a catalog print shop, so pretty blue collar, right? Pretty big warehouse, noisy.
Hold on, Chris. Can you hear me? You're sounding off. Yeah, no, I can't hear you. Hold on. I don't know why. You were talking and then you were sounding off, so I can't hear you. Can you hear me? You can hear me. I just can't hear you now. And let me just see on the broadcast.
Let's try on.
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay.
What happened?
So I changed it to the internal microphone, and
man, what's wrong with this stuff?
I know, instead of my headset. So again, we were talking about the focus upon profitability and result, and that's all senior leaders know how to do. But unfortunately, that doesn't positively impact a frontline employee, a mid-level employee. People may feel like, well, yeah, we made a lot of money this quarter, but my pay didn't change. And I still feel like no one's paying attention to me. No one appreciates me. I don't get validation for the contributions. So that's the bigger problem. And I think one of the interesting levers today is that as our generational influences are becoming more prevalent, we've got millennials that are going to be by far the majority of leadership roles in organizations around the globe in the next 5 years. And Gen Zs are coming in. Those are very different generational preferences. And again, we can oversimplify and stereotype, which we don't want to do. But what baby boomers even want is the knowledge that we're contributing to something bigger than ourselves and to something beneficial to our communities. And you start to mention that as a responsibility of senior leaders, very few really are comfortable with doing that. It's like community benefit, community service. My board wants me to just simply sell more widgets or whatever it is. So that's the interesting primary challenge that I see today from organizations is we really have people who don't feel valued, who don't feel appreciated. And how do we fix that?
And so how do we make the connection between making them feel empowered and purposeful and relate that directly to selling more widgets?
Well, and what's very cool, and again, talk about huge blessings, and I'm grateful for the clients that have let me in over the last 20 plus years, is that as this process gets leaders engaged, they actually literally get engaged in, well, I should have conversations with my employees about what frustrations they have. Right. And if I can remove employee frustrations, they're going to make more widgets. We're going to sell more widgets. People are going to be happier. There's less drama. So what's very cool and very interesting is consistently, and again, this is not a quick fix. This is an 18-month process, but typically we see employee experience, employee engagement gains of 40% in 18 months. We see customer service experiences grow by 40% in 18 months. And results and profits grow by 35% in 18 months. Now, senior leaders go, how much can I improve profits? It's like, no. It starts with a year's worth of work to actually make employees feel valued, and that'll trickle down to the employee's treatment.
Sorry, let me ask that. Is this the data you've gotten from your clients or data that's out there?
It's my clients particularly, because we want to make sure that as they engage in this long process and bring this guy in, is what are the things that we're looking to impact? What are the metrics that you want to improve? Right. And very typically, engagement, service, results.
Nice. That's awesome. So, if I love this topic because, for me, when I talk about personal branding, it's the same thing. People need personal branding because they lack three things in the workplace. One is they need more alignment. They lack alignment, so they want more meaning, purpose, values activation in their lives. Number two, they want more focus. They want clarity, purpose, direction in their lives. And then finally, if you have greater alignment and you have greater focus, you're going to have number three, which is greater impact, which is better success, exactly. Results, and legacy. And when you do that, then you're more productive, you're more loyal, you retain better, you want to do more for that organization. So, that to me, employee engagement and personal branding, these are all things that address the culture, and that's why I focus a lot on my efforts for personal branding.
Well, I'll tell you, I've got so many wonderful stories over the years, and of course, working on the next book, this is what we do. Okay. And it's still cultural leadership. But one of the stories that I recalled from 20 years ago was interviewing a senior leader at a major retailer. And he said, I was at a retirement party at a distribution center last week. So we go in, and Jose has been working in this distribution center for like 25 years. They've got a little sheet cake, right? They've got candles going. There's 30 people around. Everyone's applauding. And it's like, Jose, say something. It's your last day here at the distribution center. And Jose takes his hat off and he says, for 25 years, you've paid me to use these. And for the same amount of money, you could have had this. And you could have heard a pin drop. And it's the issue of, if you're not listening, validating, people are smart. People are very smart. Sure. And if you can get leaders. Oh my Lord. And so, and I love that story because number one, it's very frequent. It happens all the time that people don't feel like they have legitimate input. They can't use their ideas.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think that, especially if someone's been there for 5, 10, 15 years, like they kind of know how things work. They've been there, and we don't take the time to really leverage them in that space. Now, you talked about also how your focus is more on senior professionals, although it sounds like you're talking more about more frontline workers. So, what is the challenge that senior leaders have? So, when you say senior leaders, you're focusing on them to say, hey, you need to focus on culture. Is that the idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and what's interesting again is that there's an education process here, because senior leaders never been asked to monitor, measure, reward culture. They don't know how to do that, so we can't blame them. So that's the piece of, yes, this is literally your responsibility, and if you're not modeling the culture you want, nobody else outside this quote office level building are going to model it either. So there's a very interesting transition, and literally, I'll tell you the core first step is to define what the senior leaders want in their organization. They have no trouble doing a definition. We do a servant purpose, which is a present day reason for being. To what end? How are you improving the lives of customers and communities? That's an interesting shift. But then we look at, okay, so you've got systems embedded in tracking performance expectations and targets you want and sales results, et cetera. Well, let's talk about respectful treatment. How do we define being civil to each other. And it's like, well, why should we do that? I says, because people aren't civil to each other, right? We're stupid, we're mean, we're selfish, etc. That's the human condition. So we actually define values in behavioral terms. So I help coach them get to, what does a good citizen smell like? How do they act? How do they treat each other? How do they treat customers? Whatever. So that organizational constitution also includes strategies and goals. So now we've got this document that is supposed to be the foundation of this new culture. And I say, for the first 6 months, leaders only are going to not only, and we're going to do a marketing campaign of the new values and behaviors. We're going to do a cool logo. We're going to do posters and stuff. But the issue is you have to talk about it. You have to praise it. You have to model it. And I say, you all, none of you are going to be able to run a yellow light in this town ever again. Because once you begin to raise the specter of, these are the values we want, scrutiny goes up. And boy, are we careful to watch others' behavior and judge it, right? So I'm very careful to say, you all cannot delegate this. One of the biggest things you have to do as a senior leader is, yes, you still have to monitor, measure, and reward productivity, results, profits, but you must do so in a way that's civil and respectful. And if you behave in an uncivil fashion, but you've got this cool big value of integrity and excellence, that doesn't jive. That does not work. So where this gets very interesting is, and literally my role as an executive coach comes in to say, here's the behaviors that I've heard from your direct reports that you're modeling that's inconsistent with the values. Help me understand. Right. And it lets this outside voice say, you're yelling, you're mean. Well, how do you know these things? I ask people and they tell me, right? It's not that complex. So what is very interesting is leaders must realize they're closely scrutinized every second, and every plan, every decision, every action. And there are some leaders in every scenario, whereas we bring forward these values and these behaviors and we say, okay, 6 months from now is our first custom value survey. And you're going to be rated by your direct reports on how well you model these behaviors. There's leaders that say, thank you. I've been waiting for this. This is completely aligned, and they do it. There's maybe that's the top 30%, right, of the population of leaders. That middle group is going to kind of wait and see if the senior leaders actually demonstrate it, if there's credibility for it. That bottom 10% is like, I don't like these people. They're always going to be, right, trying to take advantage of me. I'm leaving. And that's okay. Because if they can't plug in, the culture's never going to sustain.
Well, and that brings up two things that I thought about. One is, as a speaker, one of the golden rules of speaking that I learned from one of my speaker mentors is the 10-80-10 rule, which is there's a top 10% that love you, there's a middle 80% that are in the middle, and there's a bottom 10% that are going to hate whatever you do.
No matter what you say and how you do it.
Yeah. So if you focus on the bottom 10%, this is why it's important. This is what let them go. Forget about them. They're not meant to be won over. Same with culture. Like they're the ones that are going to leave, and that's fine. You want to focus on the 80% to convert them into that top 10%. That's what you want to, and that still works for culture. The second thing I want to mention is that one of my favorite stories was when I was working in corporate. All of a sudden, plastered on these walls everywhere were these posters from HR. These are the top 7 values of organization, and I was like, so. Okay, where did these things come from? Like, no one's talking about this. So just because you post it on the wall, we're not going to follow this stuff? And what's even worse was there was clearly 3 or 4 of them were like, oh my God, these people never do this. So,
which means there's no credibility.
Oh yeah, it was so bad because I understand the idea, work hard, work smart. Okay, fine. Right. But there were some certain things there that just weren't happening at all. And I was like, wow, this is going to make, and everyone was talking about it. And it actually caused a culture shift in the wrong direction.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, and it's interesting. I had what's wonderful about being pretty bold, and again, once I learned Twitter as an avenue for promoting concepts and ideas, my mantra is let's build a purposeful, positive, productive culture. And so I get folks that don't become clients, but they become real ambassadors of it. And so I got an email this week from a gentleman who has helped a city really get their values defined well, and they're charged up about it. Probably been working on this for 5 years, and it's like this is a huge commitment. So this week he said, how do we know we're making traction? And I said, aha, Grasshopper, this is the actual alignment piece, right? This is the how are people behaving. And I said, here's an example. Here's a client who just did their second custom value survey. And it's like, you actually have to ask people to measure, to rate their bosses. And he's like, you talked about this. I said, yeah. And it's not complex, but what it does is it allows, first of all, there's, again, the campaign of, as you experienced in corporate, all of a sudden these mysterious values popped up, but no one was aligning to them. So that's the trick, is you've got to make sure people are modeling. And the people that have to model it first are leaders.
Right. That's great. That's great. And again, if you're just joining us, I'm interviewing Chris Edmonds from the West Coast to talk about driving positive results through culture. And again, we'd love to, if you have questions, by all means, ask questions. Adamola and Isel say hello. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. We want to get questions from you guys, so please ask questions on how to build better culture, how to build better teams, how to build better positivity. I think that's really important for us. One thing I want to switch into is let's look at like CEO and vice president type people, and then you have your senior directors. And so, how do we get that senior C-suite people to get just their senior directors on board with the culture piece, as opposed to going all the way down?
Yeah. Well, and that's critical, because again, people may not see the senior leaders as frequently on a day-to-day basis, but they do see their department managers, division managers, etc., and they see what language they use, they see how they treat others, and again, which can build credibility for your desired culture or completely erode it. And the trick is, again, ensuring that leaders realize, first of all, don't go down this path if you're not willing to have every leader embrace this. Yeah. And it's not just saying, yeah, this is great, but I continue to behave badly. It's like you actually have to behave according to the behaviors that you've defined. And what's very interesting, and I was on a call with a client that I've been working with for about 5 months just yesterday, and it's about the measurement. It's about when's our first custom value survey coming, and how do I have the conversation with one of my direct reports? This is CFO of this organization. How do I have the conversation with one of my direct reports who is a director, but who behaves badly in public? Yeah. And I said, now we're getting there. And the reality is, if you don't have any conversations at all, then this person can continue to behave however they'd like. Right. However, now that you've actually posted the posters, right? You've actually begun the marketing of these are our values, these are our behaviors, and there's a test coming, right? We're going to do our first value survey. They're going to do it in July. You have to begin having the conversations now. Here's what I saw in this meeting. Help me understand how that behavior and that language builds integrity. And it's like,
what I love about that's great. What I love about values too is that whenever people have conflict with their manager, the director, I always say, look, if you focus on the values of the organization and the team, then you can say, here's what happened, here's how it made me feel, here's the values of our team / organization. I don't see how this aligns. And I think that and as opposed to attacking them personally or saying my boss is really, really bad, you have to lay that out, because, and the other thing you lay it out with is, what are the objectives and goals of the organization in terms of business results. And if you do those two things, you look at business results, you look at values, then you can make a compelling case to manage upward and to get either some change from that senior manager, or eventually, the best thing about culture too is that if you work hard to create a fantastic culture, the right people will stay and the wrong people will leave. That's exactly what you want.
Yeah, it is exactly what you wanted. I'm reminded Jim Collins did with Jerry Porras, Built to Last, years and years and years ago. It was an absolute Bible as I built this process. But Porras talked about, Jim Collins talked about going to work out of college for HP, for Hewlett Packard, which was a very team-based decision-making culture. And he says, I got kicked out of that culture because I'm such an individual thinker, like a tennis shoe in a dryer. And I thought, what a great metaphor, right? Because it's true. If you are going to stay in a strong culture, you kind of got to accommodate that strong culture. Absolutely. I want to come back to a piece that you raised, Bobby, about how do we help next level leaders become good coaches about respectful treatment and civil treatment and whatnot, because literally most of those leaders have, through the course of their career up to now, been asked to focus upon performance management. And you know, and all of our listeners know that there's some good practices in your current organizations around performance management, and there's really lousy practices as well. We have a tendency as leaders to not necessarily hold people accountable for performance, right? It's inconsistent. And of course, if we increase that consistency, you'd have better performance, better results, better profits, etc. But the reality is, let's invite these leaders to now coach about respectful treatment. Boy, that's as far from, get these reports done, increase efficiency 2%. Let's sell 10% more this quarter in this market. That's a scary place to go. And literally, that's where skill building and practice to help people coach effectively is critical.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that. Now, as we're nearing the end of our session here, but if people are on board and want to ask questions, you can. Christian Murphy says, missed most of it, but I'm going to look at the recording later. He also says, building a positive culture is key to success for any organization. 100% right. Love it. That's good. Yet still, people don't, invest time and energy because they don't see. And I'm also the same way about leadership development, right? People don't take the time to focus on leadership development for their employees to really build better results. And it's like the last thing they do, or it's the first thing they cut.
Yes, absolutely. Because it's perceived as not relevant, maybe.
Right. And I also agree with the fact that, culture is very similar to personal branding as well, which, again, they have in personal branding, which is we have to educate people on the importance of it too. So part of me is trying to sell that this is what you need to do and here's why it's important. But part of me is to educate them on why. Like, I have to show them the data of how personal branding can create results, create better loyalty and productivity, things like that. It's very
absolutely. Well, and I'll bet our listeners, and Bobby, you and I have had the same experience, that early on in our careers, whatever the culture was, wherever we were working, there was a boss that was our best boss, right? Or it was, top 10, if nothing else. And I remember Jerry Nutter, God love Jerry. This is back in my YMCA days. And he was doing development programs over and above his real job. And I took a class from him, and I went up to him after this 3-day thing, and I said, I'm going to work for you someday. And he says, thanks for the warning. He was hilarious. But I literally followed this guy for 10 years. And I got a chance to work for him for the last 8. And it's like you find a leader who really does demonstrate values that are consistent with your own, but they're also in service to others. And it's like, short of changing your entire organization, which you may not be in charge of, find a boss that really gets service to others and latch on to him or her, follow them. You're going to learn from them. You're going to grow from them. That's kind of the intermediate place to go.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. And in fact, I often coach people to say, look, having a great boss means someone who supports you, will champion you, and will not be upset if you do a really good job, and they won't get jealous. And on that note, I also mentioned that I have had the misfortune of having almost every single boss be a bad boss. I've never actually had a good boss in my corporate life. So
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Brand marketing. No, I just went from bad boss to bad boss to bad boss. No, actually, no. I had a good boss for 1 week when I started a new job, and then she left, and I was like, okay, great.
Ah,
Learn some of his work.
yeah,
I did have one good boss, but it was like a 1 month program for high school kids, and she was amazing. I loved her, but that was like for 1 month. But in
right.
corporate, I never had that experience,
Yeah.
and it's part of the reason why I'm probably more jaded about corporations. But like I think for the most part, there are some great organizations, but ultimately there are great bosses, and there are great. I was talking to my wife actually, and she was like, well. She was looking at senior, C-suite people. Like, oh, they're all, profit driven and they're all jerks. I'm like, no, actually, there's some really amazing ones. You just have to you gotta find them. Like, I mean, they're that 20, 30% that really shine through. You have to find them because if you have a bad boss or a bad director, that culture is going to hurt you, and so long term. So why would you want to stay?
Yeah, well, and it's an interesting avenue because I think, again, newer generations don't care about. I'm going to work here for a year, and if it's not a good match, I'm going to go find something better. Us baby boomers and maybe even Gen Xers were a bit more attuned to, well, I need to stay here for 8 years. I need to battle this through. And it's like, maybe you don't. Find a great boss, learn what you can. If you get 2 or 3 years, that's great. But then what's very cool about this, Bobby, and I tell you, it's one of the most gratifying things I experience, is when I work with a senior leadership team, and again, they're stuck with me for 12 to 24 months, but those leaders then move to other organizations. They call me because they get it and they want to integrate these better practices in their next companies. And so there's some really cool things. Some of them even said, my kids are now asking me what kind of drug am I taking because I'm being so nice to them now. And it's like, you don't have to be the mean parent. You can be a firm parent, but also you got to validate the good stuff that's happening right in front of you.
And right behind me there, parenting, is our Team Omer values, right? So I actually went through a values exercise with my kids.
That's awesome.
Identify exactly what we do. Now, I'm completely gonna switch gears here. You were Ken Blanchard, which is awesome. Yeah. What's the best thing you learned from him?
What's fabulous about Ken is he is such an open player. And if you think about the books that you've read of Ken has written more than 100 books.
Wow.
He prefers to co-author.
Okay.
And I said, why don't you write your own? You can do anything you want, right? And he said, I already know what I know, and I want to learn from others. So there's this wonderful, it's almost egoless, I want to learn from you because I know then I can be better. And I remember Ken wrote a book called Everyone's a Coach. This was probably 20 years ago, but he wrote it with Coach Don Shula. And Don just had a birthday. Don's in his 90s. This was, NFL coach, only undefeated season. His teams loved him. But Ken and Don just had a ball learning from each other. And I thought, boy, what a great shift from what can be a very common, let's call it illness of thought leaders, that I know everything and I'm brilliant and you should follow me, to I know some things, but man, I bet I can learn from you. So that's the thing that always impressed me. And he's still writing books with others today.
Right. Now, and can we get him on a live stream? We should get him on a live stream and have a chat.
I know a guy. I bet we can figure this out.
Yeah. We'll make something happen. All right. So if you're joining us and you've enjoyed this, by all means, tag people, share it on your page. If you have questions after it's over, by all means, ask questions. I'll be doing more broadcasts coming up in the next few weeks. Every Monday, Wednesday, Fridays are the days. I'm not consistently on those days because if I book a breakfast meeting or something happens, I can't do it. But if I'm here, Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings, 8:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm here. If you ask questions below afterwards, tag us, tag Chris. He will answer the questions. I do appreciate your time, Chris. Where can people find you or connect to you?
My online presence is at drivingresultsthroughculture.com. So it's all one word. But I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, but you can find I'm on LinkedIn. You can find all those links at drivingresultsthroughculture.com.
Wonderful. All right, everyone. Have a safe and wonderful week. Is it Friday?
It is a Friday.
Wow, that we went by really fast. Right?
That's pretty cool. So,
Okay, well,
Bobby, thank you for the opportunity. This was great.
oh, my pleasure. This is great to have you back. This is fantastic. I appreciate it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day, and we'll see you soon.